Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews, and I'd say it's a medium week. I mean, it's pretty good size, but not super duper crazy. A fair amount of a lot of new books this week. I'm really kind of surprised. So let's get right to it. First, we have Miracleman number 0. So it's an anthology. So the first one is Cropia by Neil Gaiman and Mark Buckingham. Blood on the Snow by written and drawn by Ryan Stigman. Miracleman, the animated series of Miracle Funnies, is written and drawn by Ty Templeton. Whispers in the Dark is written by Mike Carey with artwork by Paul Davidson. Komodo's Miracle is written and drawn by Peach Momoko. The Man Who Dreams Were Miracles was written by Jason Aaron and Lionel Francis Yu. So this is so what this is it's kind of the kickoff to the back in the 80s. Eclipse reprinted Miracleman from the UK. And then after they ran out of reprints, they continued doing new stories. Alan Moore was the original writer of that when it first started. And then later on, Neil Gaiman and Mark Buckingham came on to finish off the last arc. And it never got finished. It got partially the first few issues were published, but then it never got finished. So a number of years ago, Marvel bought back the rights to Miracleman, and so which was originally called Marvel Man in the UK. And so instead of just reprinting the Neil Gaiman story in the Mark Buckingham artwork, Mark Buckingham wanted to redraw the artwork. So that's part of the reason why it's taken so long. Could have been also Neil being busy and maybe he hadn't finished writing it. But anyways, so this kicks off. This is a precursor to that, but you don't really have to know that story. It's more of just these are short stories about the Miracleman characters. So or really the mythology, not necessarily the characters. So the Cropia is a bookend to this. So Blood on the Snow by Stigman is so what it is it's that one's about Big Ben, who's a robot in the mythology. And once again, these are all really short stories. So it's just, he comes across, Big Ben comes across Miracleman. They kind of get into a little fight. And that's really about it. Then we have, so the Ty Templeton, it's just one, it's an ad for the Miracleman animated series. And then he does basically parodies of cartoon strips, but with Miracleman characters. So those are actually pretty funny. The Whispers in the Dark is really, it's kind of an interesting story. That one's a noir type story, which is, so it's about a detective who runs across one of the Miracle kids, and he basically tries to solve this crime where so what it is in the future, you don't really die, because what it is there your brain has a chip and then it downloads and they make a new body for you. And so so the detective tries to figure out what happened on the spaceship where everybody quote unquote died. The Komodo Miracle by Peach Momoko is more of a it's interesting because of course she kind of blends Japanese mythology into Miracleman, so it's kind of it's a rebirth type story. And then the final story, The Man that Dreams Miracles, is the writer of the comic Miracleman. Now, it's not necessarily Alan Moore. It's just a person who has written it, who's living in a nursing home. And so one of the miracle villains comes in and so his creation of Miracleman comes in and saves him. So, and the one nice thing is, that one, Aaron's story is actually really interesting, and of course Francis Yu's artwork is really, really nice on that one. At first, I was really kind of hesitant because I'd originally thought, oh well, it is new stuff, but it's not really tied in. It's more of like creators like, oh, I like Miracleman and I want to contribute something. So it's kind of a catch-22 because I think if you don't know the mythology of Miracleman that well, some of the stories are not necessarily going to work as well. I think it's fairly new reader friendly, but it kind of weirdly isn't, but not in a bad way. I think you can still read it if you haven't read Miracleman or read it in quite a while. The other nice thing that it does have some preview pages of the new Mark Buckingham artwork that's going to be in the series. So later on, I believe it's later on this month, is the actual first issue of that of the Golden Age story that Neil Gaiman and Mark Buckingham are doing. So that was a nice little treat. So kind of the question is it worth getting? It's kind of a yes, but I wouldn't say a strong yes. I mean, I enjoyed it and everything. I liked the fact that you had different contributors doing doing new stories, but it was more of, I think they were none of the stories really knocked me out. So part of it was, especially like say Blood on the Snow was actually almost too short. It really the one that probably Whispers in the Dark works really well. The Komodo's Miracle and and of course The Man Who Dreams Were a Miracle, they all work well. I think Blood and Snow it's not that it's not good. I think it's just too short. Once again, the artwork on it's really nice. The stories are good. I just don't know, if you're not familiar with Miracleman, how you're going to react to it, because I enjoyed it, but I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed with it. But I do think it's worth checking out. Like I said, it's just not a big, strong recommendation. Next up, we have Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, #1, written by Matthew Rosenberg, with artwork by Carmen D. Granaminso. And then there's a backup story written by Matthew Rosenberg, with artwork by Francis Francavilla. Here's Looking at You, Kidder. So Joker's back after this takes place after the James Tynion Joker series, where he was out of the country. So he comes back to Gotham, but he's not really welcomed by the gangs and the other villains, and so he decides to go to LA to start a new thing. And then his thing is, well, why just one city when I can travel across the United States and have franchises in every state. That's the basic setup here. I think that the story was decent, but I don't know that it was particularly compelling. It was all nice and everything, but it was like, okay, that's nice, but it really, in the end, it didn't bring much new to the mythology of the Joker. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's a fine read, but it's just like, okay, that's nice, but I will say the artwork by Grandamacino is actually it's a really good looking book. The one really big plus for it, the backup story, Here's Looking at You, Kidder, is just it's so Joker has this fantasy of, like, he wants to have a date with Power Girl, and Power Girl is just like, you're a bad guy, and just keeps beating the crap out of him, but he's like in love with her. And so the short story is basically him deciding, well, maybe I shouldn't be in a purple suit, and so he goes and tries different outfits on, and I really have to give props to Francavilla. and he actually draws some of the, like the movie thing, like the Jared Leto Joker, and it's quite amusing, the story, and it really is good. I think because it doesn't really, it's just a great short story. I really like that. In fact, I actually enjoyed that better than the main story. Not to say, once again, that I don't think the main story is bad. It's just kind of okay. So, yeah, it didn't really, it really wasn't super compelling, but I really did like that backup story. So, there's that. Next up, we have the West Moon Chronicles #1, written by Frank Jun Kim, with artwork by Joe Baccardo. So what it is Jason, his grandfather lives in this town, so he's going back with his girlfriend to his grandfather's house, Jun Ha, because he's fallen on hard times and he needs some money. And he's telling his grandfather, hey, if we sell this place, we'll make money. You can get out of this town. And, they don't, they're not particularly friendly. They're not necessarily racist, but they're not friendly at the same time. But then it's discovered that the girlfriend that's with him is actually a fox in disguise. And so it has a lot of Korean mythology in it. And so they have to, and there's something about this town. It's not really explained, well, that there's kind of forces in this town. And really, it's that's kind of the basic story. It doesn't. Part of the problem with the book is it doesn't. It kind of explains some things, but then it doesn't. It's almost like, it's like the exposition is kind of there, but not fully there. There is some nice action sequence. I will say it's a really the artwork's actually pretty nice. Scout comics are always kind of a bit of a crapshoot, and so art wise, like, it's way above average for Scout, but like the story was like okay, but it was like I didn't kind of get enough of it to like really like be super compelled to buy, get the second issue. I think there was some interesting ideas. I think it was just a little disjointed. Like there wasn't maybe enough exposition. It just seemed like you were kind of a little bit dropped into the middle of the story, which that I don't think really helped its case. So it was that one was kind of a miss this week. Next up, we have Batman 128, written by Chip Zdarsky, with artwork by George Jimenez. And the backup, I Am Gun, written by Chip Zdarsky, with artwork by Leonardo Romero. So the main story, we still have Failsafe. So Failsafe is a character that Bruce has created to basically kill everyone, like in the Justice League. Like he has like the capability of like, he understands each character's powers and knows how to defeat them. So basically Bruce has had the crap beat out of him. Superman finally shows up, but of course, Failsafe has Kryptonite sword, so that's not going to work out well. And then the rest of the Justice League comes in: Black Canary, Green Arrow, Hawkgirl, and Martian Manhunter. And they kind of fend him off. So Bruce and Clark are able to get away. Tim gets them away. And so because Clark has, even though he's been stabbed by the Kryptonite sword, he's still poisoned, so they have to fix him up. And then Bruce needs to really get fixed up. I won't say how that happens, but so Gotham basically falls to Failsafe. He ultimately is kind of taking it over, but Bruce has to, ultimately come back and try to take the city back. So that's kind of where the story has gone in this first issue, or in this first story arc. And I have to say, this issue was kind of a lot of fun. It was a big battle issue, which is always, kind of entertaining, but it did move the story along. And I am liking Zdarsky's story. Of course, Jimenez's artwork is it's a really gorgeous looking book. And I'm still enjoying it. I think I do like the fact that both this what Zdarsky's doing on Batman and Ram V's doing on Detective, where they're very separate, but they're very different. This one's more of a straight up superhero, where Detective is more of a noirish detective type story. I will say I did like the backup, because this is the first part of the new backup, and it's really interesting because basically Bruce has kind of had some mental trauma, so he's trying to work through that, and then you find out that the Joker is killing people, but it's like he's kind of lost his feel. He's like, he still kills people, but they're not like, it's like he's lost his mojo. That's the setup for this story. Once again, it's just the first part. It was really interesting. The one thing I really liked about that was Romero's artwork. So that was really interesting first part of a short story. I'm still liking it. I still think it's worth checking out, but like I said, just know that it's more superhero-ish, and that's fine. And like I said, I think that it gives a balance to what Ram V is doing on Detective. So I think the good thing about it is that they are kind of, even though they're completely different, that's what's good about it. You get the superhero, and then you get the noir, but they're kind of separate. They're not trying to mix them up, and I like the fact that the books are separate. So that for me is a big plus. Next up, we have Dark Ride #1, written by Joshua Williamson, with artwork by Andre Bresson. So what this is Arthur Dante. It starts off with a flashback of the past. He kills his wife and buries her. He's burying her out in the desert near Las Vegas. And so this voice basically says, hey, this is bad, but I'm going to give you like an idea of what to do. And so what he ends up doing is creates this, think of a Disneyland, but like all horror elements. So the interesting thing is, so when it goes to the present day, there's basically kind of a map of this horror amusement park. And it's really, so what it is this new kid starts his job at the park, and he's a really big fan of the park. He loves horror films. And so when he's out, on his first day, he runs into Arthur's son, Sam Hain. And so the park's not doing as well as it has been. So the other like the PR guy is like, well, you know what we could do? We could make it more family friendly. We'll have like a kiddie area where it's not so scary. And so the new kid's like, that is really a stupid idea. So the guy fires his publicity manager because he's like, that's a stupid idea. And then so Arthur has two kids, and then the daughter, Halloween, she shows up. Think of her, she's like a social media personality. So when she shows up, everybody takes pictures. She's really, she so like they're kind of opposites, because Sam Hain runs the park, where Halloween just kind of comes in just for the excitement of like being noticed. And so there's something that ultimately happens to the new kid, which I won't give away, but I did like the setup into this story, and I think it and in the back, Williamson does, say he was a real big fan of Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm, and of course Knott's Scary Farm. And so he's kind of rolled that sort of theory into the basic premise here of the amusement park. But it's also like there's dark secrets of this amusement park, which is quite interesting. Because once again, all amusement parks, especially Disneyland, has these behind the scenes stories. So he's kind of he's taken that, but put it into this horror park, which is really quite fascinating. I really like this first issue, and the other thing that's really is Bresson's artwork's really, really nice. It's a really good looking book. It's got a good concept. I like this first issue, and it definitely gives you a reason to come back, which is always good. So I think this one's worth checking out this week. Next up, we have Kaya #1, written and drawn by Wes Craig. So what this is Kaya is she is taking Jin, the prince, to the north, because the city that they were in has been taken over and everything. So she is trying to get Jin to the north to be protected. Now, we don't quite know what has happened in the past. We just know that they're heading north. So as they're heading north, they're going through the desert. They don't have any food, because it looks like they got out of town very quickly. So they don't have a lot of supplies with them. So they come across this dilapidated town, but then there's this like lizard gang that shows up. And they kidnap Jin, and then one of the guys, Seth, knows Kaya. So he's like, I know them. It's okay. We don't have to be. And then he talks about, well, heading north is going to be really dangerous. There's all this stuff, and that's basically this first issue. It's kind of like there's not. The story's pretty basic so far, but the thing I do like about this is, one, it just has a really kinetic energy, both in the story and the feel of it from Craig's artwork. And the other thing is, it's a great all ages book. I mean, there's some violence, when they try to capture Jin, but ultimately it's not like it's a bloodbath or anything. There's really nothing it's not too extreme or anything like that, which I really did like. But I think the thing is, it's just kind of like there's this like, what's going on, and like, but you're intrigued. It's not like you go, what's going on, and I don't know what's going on and I don't care. You do actually care. I think that's really the thing. Even though we don't know these characters too well, I think that Craig is set up a really interesting thing. And there's and Kaya also has a metal arm or something, so we don't know what's going on there, but I'm sure we'll learn as we go along. So I think we kind of know certain things just from this first issue, how it's unfolding story wise. I really liked it. Now, like I said, there's not a lot of there's a lot of story, but not a lot of exposition of what's actually going on. But I like how it's unfolding. Like, we learn a little bit this issue, and I'm sure as it goes along. I think it's worth checking out. Like I said, I think it's intriguing. The artwork's just incredibly gorgeous, I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Poison Ivy #5, written by G. Willow Wilson, with artwork by Marcio Takara, and Brian Level and Stefan Gardino is also doing the artwork. They do the first, I think, 8 pages, and then Takara takes over the rest. So we kind of learn that how Ivy has gotten the Lima spores. And we find out that one of her old teachers, or this doctor, Jason Woodrow, who is actually the Green Man, has infected her. So what's happening is, and we've seen this in the previous issues, where the Lima spores is starting to affect her, really affect her. And in this issue, we find out that it's basically hit the brain, where she's starting to hallucinate. She's driving to the Green Man, but the best part is she starts hallucinating that Batman is in the car with her, and he's like, they're having a conversation. You're just like, what the and it's like, really, like, that she's like losing it, but it's really quite fascinating. And then she's trying to, like, first of all, she's going after the Green Man because, like, this thing is like killing her, so she wants to see if, like, he can fix it. But of course, his whole plan was to infect her and then send her out so he can spread this virus. And that's kind of, and I don't want to say too much more, because there's kind of some plot points that are going to lead to the end of this first story arc, which I believe is the next issue will be the last part of this first story arc. I'm really enjoying it. Wilson's done a great job of developing a really great story. I like that she really has found a nice voice for Ivy in this series. And the artwork is really, really fantastic. And actually, Level and Gardino's artwork for the first, I believe, 8 pages is actually quite nice. And it's very surreal. So I think that was kind of a neat idea to have 2 different artists and kind of have because the first part of the story is just like this horror movie, and it's really kind of visually messed up, and they really get it. I'm really loving this series. I can't wait to see how this first story arc rolls out. And I know that because originally it was only going to be 6 issues, it's done so well. They're doing an additional 6 issues, so I'm very excited, and I think it's well worth checking out. Next up, we have Spider-Man #1, written by Dan Slott with artwork by Mark Bagley. And there's an inker which I don't want to miss. Shoot. Sorry. I normally write all this stuff down, but I guess I messed up because I know Mark Bagley does pencil. John Dell is the inker. Apologies for that. So what this is, first of all, it's apparently the first Spider-Man title that doesn't have amazing, spectacular, incredible, super duper Spider-Man. But what this is it's a Peter Parker story, and it takes place, and it has I don't want to say really continuity, but it takes place in the Spider-Verse, i.e. every Spider character that's ever been created. Spider-Woman shows up. There's a bunch of different ones. Silk shows up. And so now Peter is with Harry Osborn, and he's created a new spider suit, and he knows he's Spider-Man. And so somebody is stealing Osborn material, and so Peter goes after it, and then the villain unleashes like these bugs, and then another villain shows up, and he's not really a villain, and then it just it's fine. It is okay. It's not like it's a terrible book. It's not like it's a terrible story, but it's like it's okay. I've never really been that big fan of Dan Slott writing, and he's not a bad writer. It's just like it's nice Spider-Man. It's almost like it's comfort food, where it's like going to McDonald's. It's not like it's bad, but you know what you're gonna get, and you get exactly what you decide you're gonna get, and that's what this book kind of is. I will say that Bagley's artwork's actually really nice, and Bagley's he's one of those pencilers, like he's a good penciler, but he's also dependent on inker, and I think Dell is actually a very good inker on him. It's nice, clean artwork, but ultimately I think, look, if you're a Spider-Man fan, it's a good place to start. There's not previous continuity for the most part. But in the end, it was okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's okay. So that's where that lands. Next up, we have Gotham City, Year 1, #1, written by Tom King, with pencils by Phil Hester, and inking by Eric Gapster. So what this goes back. So it's interesting because it's almost like it's back in time, because what it is Helena Wayne has been kidnapped, and Helena is Bruce's mother, and so this would be his great grandparents. So there's Constance Wayne and Richard Wayne, and so what it is Helena has been kidnapped, and so this woman. So it starts off that this woman goes to Sam Bradley, who's a detective, to deliver this note to Constance, and so he goes, and then he finds out that Helena has been kidnapped, but they don't, they've been told not to get the police involved. In the note that he's delivering explains that they need to give, they want $100,000 and they'll return Helena, and so that's the basic premise here. And we find out that at the end of the book, there's a flash forward of Bradley as an older man and with Batman. So it's kind of weird, because on the ransom note they drew a bat, but this is pre-Batman, so that's kind of like, it's not bad, it's just odd. Like, okay, where's King gonna go with this? I'm a big fan of Tom King. The interesting thing about this is, in a lot of respects, this is a pretty low key first issue for King, but but it's more of a detective type story. So that is kind of interesting. I do like Hester's artwork. I think he's really perfect for this because the book does have this noir feel to it. So he's really good at that. I just think it's really interesting. I mean, I like the first issue. I wasn't blown away by it or anything. I think there's a lot of interesting things. I think the key to this is going to be, okay, where's the story going to go in the second issue, and how does the future tie into this past? That was kind of the twist that was really intriguing for me. Was that kind of time jump at the end of this first issue. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. So I'd say it's going to be one to watch, but yeah, I think it's fairly worth checking out. Not a strong recommendation. I think a decent recommendation. Next up, we have Minor Threats #2, written by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom, with artwork by Scott Hepburn. So what has happened is, in the first issue, Stickman has killed the Kid Dusk, one of the sidekicks to the Insomniac. Basically, Insomniac team is the Justice League, quote unquote. And so they're on a tear. They're trying to find Stickman, and any villain that gets in the way, they're just beating trying to beat information out of him, and just like it's chaos. So what has happened is Frankie Folis, who is Playtime, has gathered a group of second tier villains to try to find Stickman, because they want this killing spree of villains to end, because they're if they find us, they're gonna kill us. As a matter of fact, one of the neatest things in the second issue is they need to get across town because they need to go to this club. And so one of the guys says, I know how to get there, and they ride the bus, because nobody looks at anybody on the bus. And it's that was genius. That was absolutely genius. So when they get to the club, they try to get in, and that doesn't work out well. So they find a back way in. So they stumble across part of Stickman's gang, and they're basically, it's interesting because, in a way, even though they're villains, they're in some ways kind of the heroes of the story, because they're just one, they don't want to die. And two, they're kind of pissed off at Stickman for creating all this chaos. So that's the basic structure. I like the first issue, and I do like the second issue. I think this is one of those books that won't necessarily blow you away, but I think there's a couple things it's got going for it. I mean, first of all, the concept isn't particularly original, but what Oswalt and Bloom are doing here is they're telling the story well, which is always one of the keys. Just tell your story well. It doesn't have to be necessarily super original. Just tell that story well. And the other thing is, I like the fact that they have a good balance of mixing humor and dark humor in with the kind of superheroic aspect of the story. And it's interesting. Once again, I don't think it's going to necessarily blow you away, but I think it's really likable, which is actually pretty nice. And Hepburn's artwork's really nice, especially when they're trying to figure out one of the villains is trying to they go back to his apartment, and he's like, okay, you stand here, everybody stand a certain place. And then he figures out the piece of the puzzle because of where Stickman's going to be. That's why they go to the club. It's really interesting. Like I said, I don't think the book's going to blow you away, but I do like it. So it'll be interesting to see where they take it. Next up, we have Junkyard Joe, #1, written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Gary Frank. So this kind of spins out of Geiger in the sense of that this character was featured in the Geiger special that had short stories. So what it does, it takes place in 1972 during the Vietnam War. And Junkyard Joe, it starts off that he is a robot, but he's got skin like a human. So they send him to Vietnam, and of course they don't know that he's a robot. So he goes out on a mission. They're sent on this mission. He ends up going with them. And so Maury Davis, Private Davis, is basically turns out to be the main character, because everybody else in the troop just gets killed. And what happens is they all get killed except for Maury. And then Junkyard Joe, kind of like his programming was to go on this mission to we're not quite sure what the actual mission is, but what happens is when he starts to become friends with the team. And so when they get killed, he like kind of, I don't know if it's a glitch or what, but he like basically goes on this rampage and starts killing Viet Cong. And then it shifts to like Washington, where he kind of goes offline, because one of the things was, once again, 72, Nixon, this was part, one of the things they were going to help to win the Vietnam War. And when he goes offline, Nixon says, well, we're going to pull out of Vietnam. So it's kind of a interesting take on history and putting this story together. It's really interesting concept, I think. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, because obviously the war ends. Where's Junkyard Joe going to go? So that's an interesting concept. And of course, Gary Frank's artwork's really gorgeous. It's a great looking book. It's a really an interesting story, and I think it's interesting because it really reminds me of like old like DC war stories, like Sergeant Rock and stuff. So I think it's a nice throwback to that kind of era of war comics, which you very rarely see war comics today. And so it's something neat. And once again, I think it's got a good story, gorgeous artwork. I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Night of the Ghoul #1, written by Scott Snyder with artwork by Francisco Francavilla. So Francavilla twice this week. But so what this is one of the Comixology originals that was online, but this is the first print edition of this story. So what it is there's this film that is Night of the Ghoul, that was made in 1936, but was destroyed in a fire. But so there's this Forrest Inneman is like, he's a horror, like he loves horror films and stuff, and so there's this, like the mythology behind Night of the Ghouls, the film. And it's like, why, what happened, was it like shown or something? And so he actually finds pieces of the film. So he's watched part of it. And so the reason that he goes to this nursing home is because the director, T.F. Merritt, is there. So he lies his way to get in to talk to him about, hey, I've seen parts of this film. It's really fascinating. How did you make it? Blah, blah, blah. And then, without trying to give too much away, what you discover is that this movie that is like a horror film is actually maybe like really more of a documentary about what happened to him as a kid. And so the film is, you find out that it's his dad and a couple other guys, that they go into this town in Germany during World War II, and everybody's dead in there, but then they discover some monster, and the monster possesses his dad. And so as you find out, like, like this is actually maybe a true story. Maybe there was a reason. So the director was actually burned. So maybe he set the thing on fire because he's like, oh crap, this is like, or maybe that has something to do with him trying to kill the monster. I don't know. But it's a really, really great premise. I really like the one thing I love about this is how it really mixes like old horror films, because, and this is where Francavilla really comes into play. So when there's the film parts, it's kind of a black and white. So when the real world is like full color, then when you see the parts of the movie, it's like black and white, which is really great because it's that throwback to like the Universal horror films and all those kind of things, because they're all great black and white films. And it's just a really interesting premise to like take this like movie that like maybe it was real. And it's really fascinating. I like the story. Actually, I love the story. I love horror films, so this was right up my alley. But I really like the concept. I think the concept's great. And then Frank Avia's artwork, I'm a huge fan of his. I love his artwork, and to see him really to get to go crazy in with the old school horror film noir kind of thing is great. This is well worth checking out, and it's nice to see it in print. I cannot read digital. It's really hard for me, but I'm glad it's in print, and thank you for Dark Horse for putting these out, because I think it's great, and I can't wait to read the next issue. I love this. And finally, this week we have Dark Crisis number 5, written by Joshua Williamson, with artwork by Daniel Sampre. And I know the big surprise, the Justice League is not dead. I know you're shocked. I was shocked. Not. So as with any giant crisis crossover with event comic, look, I mean, it is what it is. I think the thing is, I have to give Williamson, these things are got to be a big pain in the ass to write, because you're trying. I mean, every character in the DC universe is running around somewhere. This issue basically, so you have the Justice League. They rescue the Justice League. They're bringing them back, but Deathstroke, who's possessed by Pharaoh, is going to attack the Justice League. So you have the Teen Titans who are defending, and there's just like giant battles and stuff, and it's just like, look, it is what it is. It's an event comic. It's not bad. It's actually, I think it started a little better. I think now is kind of like we're in issue 5, so it's kind of a middle part of the story. So there really isn't a whole lot of story per se going on. There is, but not a lot. There's a lot of fighting in this issue, but look, it is what it is. I'm still enjoying it fairly okay. I wouldn't say that I'm overwhelmed by it, but the one thing that it's definitely got going is Sampre's artwork's really nice. And the fact that he can draw all these characters and all these, I mean, the spread for the Titans coming out of the Justice, the Hall of Justice is spectacular. It is what it is. It's an event comic. It is. We all know that everything's going to work out in the end. Somebody might die along the way, but they'll eventually come back to life. They always do. So that's good. But overall, it's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's an event comic. So that's where we're going to end it this week. So that's going to do it. As always, public service announcement. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach, California. Ryan Skinner runs a great store there. And Annie, Eduardo, Derek, Wendy, it's a great comic store, and they have a great pull service, so that way you don't miss any issues. They offer discounts on trades and graphic novels. Now, if you live in more of the LA area, there's Pulp Fiction Culver City, same name but separate store. It's run by Chris and her team. They offer the same pull service, discounts and everything. So if you're in either area, please stop by. But like I said, I have I'm the Long Beach kid. But definitely support your local comic shop. And as always, we end our show with be kind to each other. Kindness goes a long way. I know things are tough in the world. But just be kind to each other, be safe, stay healthy, get vaccinated, and just be kind, be good to each other. That's going to do it this week. Thanks for watching. As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this video. We're a little less longer this week, a little less. But anyways, take care of yourselves. We'll see you again next week. And this is Steven from Pop Culture Maven signing out. Take care. Bye-bye.